Okay, so this week's mentor meeting, shall we start with your key theme analysis?
Yeah.
So you're choosing these now that you're at this point in the course. So what did you decide to look at?
So I chose to look at scaffolds because I have a lower set year 10 that I've noticed has been struggling, and I've been wondering when to put in support and when to remove it. So I went and researched scaffolds this week.
Okay, fantastic. So where did you go to find your evidence base for this?
So I went to the Education Endowment Foundation because that's a reliable source, but I also looked at the Royal Society of Chemistry to see if they had anything personalised, or I could have looked at the Chartered College.
Okay, fantastic. But you decided to go for, you went for the EEF,
Yeah.
and you've sent it over to me, so
Yeah.
you looked at their 5-a-day reflection tool?
Yes, I did.
Fantastic. So tell me, what were the key points of learning for you there?
So it was looking particularly at STEM students and how you can support them within your lesson. So it gave me 3 strands to look at in terms of scaffolds. So visual scaffolds, so how I put things in the board, like particularly recently I've been doing electrolysis, and that equipment is things they never would have seen. So whereas I know what it looks like, they might not. So when I'm doing a practical, things like putting up a visual image. It also did about verbal scaffolds, so maybe when I'm circulating, they're the people I might look at and say, well, how can we do this together?
Yeah.
And things like that to prompt them. Or things like written scaffolds, so if I'm asking them to summarise it, whereas my top set I would maybe say summarise this concept in 10 words, for them I might put up a sentence starter or something to help them get along.
Fantastic. And when you're doing that, you're putting the sentence starters up. If you're able to link that to what you know about, if we say Willingham's model of the memory, what you understand about cognitive science, what is the teacher doing there when they provide the scaffold of a sentence starter?
Well, they're reducing the pressure on their working memory because they're not having to think about English or how do I start this, or does it need a capital, because you've written it on and you've modelled it, so you're reducing the amount of things they think about just to think about the concept you want.
Fantastic. So then as a teacher you're able to assess the knowledge
rather than maybe their ability to do English, especially in lower groups. They don't have that written literacy that other groups would have.
Okay, fantastic. So what is this going to look like in your classroom with year 10?
So with year 10 it's going to be things like putting up the practical, and when I go through it, rather than just being a written method that I might do for some of my higher sets, because at A level they are just given a written method, for them it will be maybe pictures going through. So instead, and it's also about when we have maybe written scaffolds, if I'm doing like half equations, for them I will do the steps, and I'll make a worksheet where I have the steps and then gradually removing them as they go through the questions, because they can get to the end but sometimes they need a bit of prompting to get there.
Fantastic. And what I would say as your mentor in that situation is that I think these are really worthwhile investments to make for those students so that they can focus on the scientific knowledge, but that to remember, in order to reduce your workload, to try and use things like kind of common sentence stems, common close activities, so that you can recycle those perhaps in different areas of the curriculum. And we know that when the tasks are familiar in that way, there is also a cognitive benefit for students there in terms of familiarity of task, and that will hopefully just reduce your workload with that too. And to also work with colleagues and your other trainees. I know you're here with Jordan, so that you can perhaps share that workload and have effective scaffolds across different areas of the curriculum. Okay. And my next question then is, what are your next steps then to deepen your understanding? So you've been really independent, you've sought the education research out, and it's clear that you've considered that alongside our classes here. What do you perceive your next steps to be?
I need to look at when to remove the scaffolds, because I think it's such an easy trap to think, I've set 4, here's a scaffold. But actually, if you look at your group, sometimes some children there don't need it, and actually it's no more work for you to just take away that worksheet and put the questions on the board. Maybe they don't need that, and I think you just fall into such an easy trap of they're a lower set, they're going to need it, and actually they don't. So it's knowing your children and thinking, right, who am I targeting at this at?
Yeah, I think that's a really important misconception that you bring up there about scaffolds, is that they're permanent. The metaphor, scaffolds are only there for a short term and are removed, and I think that's really important that you're thinking that before you're implementing them, how you will remove them. And if I'm right, because I have looked at your training overview of the core training you're doing at the moment, I noticed that you've been doing a lot of work at core training about Rosenthal's principles of instruction, and so I think what plays into that is that idea of guiding students' practice towards independence. So alongside the scaffolds, how are you going to guide students towards doing it without them? Because I think what there's so much science curricula to get through that I think it could be easy to kind of do one I do, we do, you do, and then just to move them off. But you know, what is your understanding of that guiding students' practice towards independence?
So the big thing that I learned from ITAP the other week was using an extended we do and actually doing multiple examples so that it just becomes routine in nature, and then it is easier for you because in the future they've got used to that idea we do, it's their routine, they know what they're doing, they know what they're walking into, and having a longer we do, they become more independent, so actually then over time it makes it easier for you as a teacher because they know where the lesson's going.
That's fantastic. And I'd noticed that you started working on that with your lead subject tutor, so hopefully now that we're back on placement we can see that in lessons too. Okay, thank you.